The drasha is like this. Yeah, it's a drasha about Bshvat. And we also get to hack on some people. So
careful to make it the Chavisa shaft. That's one thing.
you can try. Sometimes it's a good thing. It depends.
No, hard.
There's another here. He's here, Shmuley, and whoever else is here in the future, because there's a whole asynchronous situation going on. So a story is like this: that there's the Yom Tov called Tu B'Shvat. I don't know who called it that way. I mean, it's just the name of a date. Yeah, it's self-explanatory. And it's an interesting, weird Yom Tov. I mean, it's not a real Yom Tov, as you probably know. It's fake Yom Tov. But I like fake things, because then you can figure out what's real and what's fake. So fake is good. Or really fake means that people made it up, which is then something that we should be able to understand. If God made something up, then who knows? But if people made it up, then it needs to make sense. You see, people are very weird. They have this opposite way of thinking. Like, if someone made it up, then it doesn't make sense. Well, then you should either agree with the guy that made it up or not, but at least there's something very simple to think of. If it's like just God or something beyond understanding, then you should also understand it, but then you need like a whole Rambam to make that work. So that's one thing. I don't really know if there's like a real, like, what's the historical, like, Pshat in Tu B'Shvat?
You're asking me?
Yeah, you know the Pshat?
I always wonder, I'm very much this Pshat celebrate Aleph El, but...
Yeah, if you have to eat some behemoth flesh.
That's what you celebrate.
I'm Chedesh El, you have to eat behemoth flesh.
It's the only one that of all Yom Tov in the mission that wasn't Rosh Chodesh. It could be
It wasn't made into something?
You have to make into something. That's the only you have to make into. Everything else is very Rosh Chodesh.
Chodesh Elul. Tu B'Shvat is the only one that's not, because it's not Rosh Chodesh. Besides for Beis Shammai.
You have no way of historically knowing they didn't celebrate it. And the second thing is that I always thought that we had the upshine, same thing comparing to a tree. I don't know, a human being compared to a tree is a very old mythology. So I'm not sure it's based on that.
Yeah, but the problem, okay. It's not based on that. That's a drash. Because, I mean, I'm supposed to be pro-drash, I forgot. Yeah, okay, so there's a few historical hacks about it, all of which are deeply wrong. Not only because they're like the wrong kind of explanation, they're just plain wrong. There's like no reason to think that they're correct. One of them, which I have links to all of it on my post with links. There's like a thing with Shabsai Tzvi, with the Kabbalah thing, if you know about that. Okay, that's one thing. I'm not going to talk about it. Forget it. But apparently some people have, if you read like Haaretz, they'll tell you from Mr. Huss or someone that Tu B'Shvat was invented by Chamdas Yomim, and because his mythology or his like symbolism was that the tree is Shabsai Tzvi somehow, and so on, which is sort of like there's some truth in it, but it's not really true. Okay, and even if it is true, like what's the point of just saying that? Maybe it's a good mythology. Like let's think about it, let's figure it out. And I've actually read the Chamdas Yomim. It's mostly not about Shabsai Tzvi, like it's about Kavanas and Netzotzes and all kind of Arizal stuff. But yeah, it makes so. Of course, part of his system is Shabsai Tzvi, so it somehow works into the system. But it's like there's a very valuable system there. It's not just like, so this is a bad thing or whatever. There's another thing, a weird contradictory thing with the historicist explanations, which goes like this, I've noticed today. So according to the Pshat, I mean everyone knows the Pshat, that Tu B'Shvat is some kind of date chosen by some kind of people to sort of separate years in agricultural, right, for Masres and Shvias and like you say, whatever, there's different exact Chakiras, but something where like you need to, like everyone understands that years need to start and stop somewhere. Now it's actually interesting because, how do you call it? Like years basically come from this, right? The concept of a year is really the concept of a season, seasonality, recurring. This is where I've read a book from Whitehead, who claimed that seasons are where science starts, because it's like where people started to notice regularity in nature. Like the winter comes every year, so like mythological explanations, and then there's like more causal scientific explanations. So it's like, if you're like Adam Rishon, like in that, seeing the sun, suddenly you notice, wait, the sun, there's an order. Like that's a real like mythology of science story. But years generally are seasons, basically, like the recurring of the seasons. Places that don't have seasons don't really have years. I mean, there's the sun, but who cares about the sun? The question is what the sun does to us, which is seasons. and
Pays it with the,
I don't know. I just made that up.
yeah, I'm gonna fact check.
It should be true.
Seasonality, like the weather changing.
In California, people don't know about the years changing. Look it up. Find out.
Looking near the equator.
What?
The days are also becoming shorter and longer.
Yeah, but not near the equator. And only the like season model that we have, it only works for certain latitudes, right?
Right.
I actually do think, I mean, this would be like some kind of racist theory, but people don't tell anyone. But Europe, the people that have science are not the people living next to the equator for some reason. Maybe just because they're poor, but there's these weird correlations, by the way, between weather and climate. And I mean, there was the ancient theory of like climates literally making people, but there's something with this. I don't know. This is a theory. Of course, the prediction that I made is probably, if you like, that's the way to test it. Check if the people living with places that don't only have seasons, if they're dumber, or if they don't really notice nature. Maybe they just, who knows? I don't know. Anyways.
According to that logic, the Eskimos should be the smartest people.
Well,
Gotcha.
maybe there's like a mitzvah. You have to be not too cold, not too hot, not too like. Anyways, what I wanted to say is that seasons is a normal thing. Now, this is one way, but I'm not going to get into this like whole kind of trying to structure time through this. But like in general, you have seasons, natural seasons, like natural periodization of years. Natural to the extent that's natural, but like whatever crop you have, it has a certain one. Most crops, or many of them, work once a year, especially like cereals, things that people live off, are mostly yearly crops. So therefore, like sort of naturally, you have the summer and the winter, and for the most part, the natural cutoff for that is somewhere in September, or somewhere where the Shoshana is Tishrei. In other words, because that's sort of where it ends, where the season ends. Right. Wait. I'll get to that. That's yeah. I'll get that. Right. So wait. That's for crops, for most like crops that people live off for the most part. At least like agricultural. Since the agricultural revolution, people mostly, and again in the places we're caring about, people mostly live off that. That's why they have this sort of model that we have. If you really want, you could claim this to be the beginning, which is when like things start to grow. It's not when they finish to grow, when they start to grow, and that's why we have these two. There were different, and actually in like, both in the Tanakh and in Bavil and ancient society, Near East societies and Middle East societies, they had, not in Egypt by the way, Egypt has total different seasons, doesn't care about, Egypt has the whole different, ancient Egypt didn't have this model of years. If you read Egyptology, you'll know. It's interesting because Egypt doesn't have, they don't have the same because they have this whole Nile system going on, but now it's a little different since they ruined it. But Egypt doesn't have the system, so that's just so you know that Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Chodesh Zeh is very interesting because this is the Israeli or Near Eastern thing. It's not the Egyptian kind of system of seasons. They have different. Has both. Depending on who you ask and so on, but yeah. Anyways, but there's a logic for both. Like if you think of Pesach as the time when the nature starts, and so in between there's like this dead thing called winter. Okay, now that mostly works for crops. It doesn't work for trees as well. Trees, depending on what you call trees, and this is like a whole mythology about this also in the Torah. But what the Mishnah calls Ilonos, and mostly thinking of like what we think of the Shvus Aminim, like figs and dates and things like that. Firstly, they're not as distinctly yearly, at least some of them. Like a fig tree, like it keeps on having like bunches of fruit every few weeks, another bunch. Other trees do have like a few weeks a year but they're it says but also if you go to a farm, you'll find out. Like apple trees, like there's a few months a year where they're being picked, and there's more ones getting ripe. My brother has a tree in his backyard with pears. It's not. There's a few weeks. It's mitzvah in a few weeks, at least when they grow here. Yeah. But it's not the kind of thing. And also that's one thing. Secondly, there's not the kind of work needed for it. So trees mostly don't need as much work as other things, grains. Right. So that's why in Gan Eden there were only trees. If you notice, there were only trees. There were no grains. Part of the whole story of Gan Eden is that there were only trees. Yes. There are only trees, and trees are like they just grow, and you pick them, and that's why, like when it says in the Medrash that in Lisad Liva, there were people, food will grow on trees. They're just thinking of coconuts. They're not thinking of. Doesn't mean bread. This is just a weird.
I don't think bread necessarily means that you won't require effort.
It means like people. By the way, there's places where people live like this. Like again, near the equator, people which just live off whatever things that grow off trees, more or less natural, more or less by themselves.
Breadfruit.
Yeah, not bread. What there's something called other things. I don't remember. Whatever. Anyways, the Gemara talks about this about the Seres Ashvatim being like this and so. Okay, Peres Genois or whatever that is. I don't know. Anyways, why am I saying all of this? So for trees, it's slightly more complicated, especially when you want to tax them and you want to like have this tax year and it's like levium or enforcing it somehow or something like that. It's slightly more complicated to figure out how to organize the structure, how to make years, how to make time out of it. And this is why we get this like machloikas. Just like for animals, it's kind of complicated. Like we have also a machloikas about Master Behema. You discussed Rosh Chodesh El, which is only one shitta. The other shitta says Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Chodesh Tishri. And the reason is because, again, animals, again, depending on all kind of situations, they sort of have a seasonality, but not in the way that grains have. It might have. It depends. Again, I don't know about this. The Gemara does consider them to usually usually give birth in the summer, and I think that there's some truth behind this. Again, probably you could manipulate it if you really want, and so on. But no, but they're pregnant for a few months or whatever it is. I don't know how long. Yeah, there's some logic to it.
It's very easy to figure out.
People also give birth mostly in the summer.
Yeah.
But maybe there's other reasons. I don't know. Maybe if you leave them naturally, they all give birth in the summer. And I don't know. So, anyways, but it's somewhat more fake. And for trees, it's even more complicated. But in some sense, for most trees of the kind of trees that we're thinking of, they grow. Actually, most trees are like late. Like that's why we have Pesach al Tviva, Batzeres al Peres Elan. So trees mostly give fruit later in the summer. Sometimes all the way into the winter, possibly all the way like to Hanukkah, almost, depending. Okay, we'll get to those trees. But the trees that we're thinking, you have to remember that in the olden days there were very few trees. I mean, in the areas we're thinking of. There's an article from Nadav Shner who tries to explain that Shivas Aminu is basically, that's all the trees that were domesticated, were trees, but all the domesticated trees.
Natural Israeli trees.
Yeah, but domesticated, now it's trees that people sort of can control, they figure out. I'm sure there were some nuts growing in some forests, that's not the point. Anyways, most of the Shivas Aminim, I think, grow, like olive trees don't give fruit all year, mostly late in the summer and sometimes like all the way into here, but not much, not forever. Again, depending on a million factors, but anyways, so that's why it's not really a clear thing. There isn't like a very simple Rosh Hashanah for them. And it's not, their Shana is not where anything starts and not where anything ends. The way that most people that are trying to give a natural explanation explain it is, like you said, that it's really just a very clear cutoff date in the sense of, like in the winter, most trees are dead. Like it's the most winter, so definitely everything is dead. So we could like use it as a reset date in the most easiest way. And they claim that that's why the Machlokes B'Sham V'Sil doesn't really make any difference because there's no trees. And if you notice in the Gemara, there's the story of Rabbi Akiva taking a esrog and giving it 2 masres on Chodesh Bshvat. And that's true for esrog, because esrog is the thing that's confusing. Esrog is this like archetype of a tree that is year round. It really doesn't care about seasons, more or less, as the Gemara calls it. Adar B'Lana Meshana Meshana. And therefore, the esrog was like the thing that broke all the categories for Chazal. And esrog is, don't tell anyone, but it's also not a naturally Israeli fruit. So that's probably what, like, it doesn't fit into the categories that they got. So that's why esrog is the thing that makes a difference in Chamishas B'Shvat. That's why all the Chassidim that daven for esrog, they're right. Because the only nafkamina from Chamishas B'Shvat is esrog. Like
it's possible they're kind of pyramid.
I didn't say that they're not, but they come from somewhere else. Anyways. Nobody knows these other kind of history. That like, who know, you were there and you found a seed. What are you saying? Stop. Anyway,
you don't know.
You don't know.
You can trace genetic lines through crossbreeding currently, where they DNA strands appear in different countries.
Or from the esrog? There's a whole book that the guy ran.
You could see, first of all, ecologically more important DNA strand. But you can set the DNA strand. Older fruits will not have a DNA strand. Later fruits will have it because there's cross-pollination.
Because they're connected. But how do you have fruit that are so late, so old that you can check? I don't know.
What?
Where did you find of ancient fruits?
The
fruits that are there now?
Yeah.
Okay. Kitzur, that's the story, and so that's like basically the facts, or that everyone agrees on, more or less. So there's other time, and the Gemara doesn't actually give the reason that I gave, so of course this is just made up by someone. They have other reasons, but whatever they are, they're basically based on this kind of thing. And therefore, it's just like a question of when to give Maser and so on, and doesn't seem to do any celebration for it, and doesn't really make sense to even to have any celebration. That's what most people claim, because, like in this end, you could say, oh, we can have a harvest, like not have a harvest festival, like a spring festival, kind of. Sort of makes sense, although I'm not sure if that does make sense. Or in the end of the summer, at the end of the harvest season, we could have sort of like a Chag Yosef, but we can't have something in Tu B'Shvat. Yeah, we could have maybe like a message saying, from now on, do your Maser or separate your Maser or something, at most. In reality, so that's step one of the like facts. That's the halacha also. That's halacha still works that way. But there's a few things. There's actually a few things. There's a few things, and the people that I try to trace it, they find they have a few things. One of them is there are ancient. I don't know how, depending what you call ancient, over 1,000 years old poems and like medrash that make Chamishas B'Shvat into some kind of Yom Tiv. There's people that argue about this if it's true, but there's more than one piyut from the 11th century or earlier, 9th century, for Chamishas B'Shvat. There's also like medrash where the medrash and the medrash in Megillas Esther and other places does this kind of thing, and there's much later people doing the same thing where they like have this thing, you know, like Haman doing his goyrel from each month and like saying, oh, this month is too good for the Jews, they have this going on, that month they have that, and then Chamishas B'Shvat, on Shvat he goes, oh, there's Chamishas B'Shvat, so it's not a good month for me to get the Jews. It's other that was. Yeah. Okay, that's probably even, yeah, wherever. But other is the one according to this medrash, because there's nothing going on. I mean, there's Moshe dying, which is supposedly a bad thing. I don't know where this Mar Cheshvan thing comes from. No. But anyways, yeah. So there are such.
Very pointedly as per the Megillah, starting from reading there. Sorry.
No, I understand.
No, I'm sure it's
Yeah. Why? Purim is for Pesach.
What? 30 days before Purim
Is what?
is Tu B'Shvat.
Yeah, and therefore.
What?
Who?
Therefore, if you're trying to get the Purim boy, right, even to me, then you gotta get your fruit.
Okay.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know about that. There are people making that connection, but I don't think it's. Anyways, but there's like lists, and people give lists, and you could see sort of people. Yeah, it's probably for Pesach. That's true. You could see people like counting Tu B'Shvat as a thing, Which what does that mean? I don't know. Nobody knows what it means actually, or it doesn't say what it means. What we do have, and this is also like as old as Minhag Ashkenaz goes back, wherever that is. Minhag Ashkenaz is to skip Tachnan on Tu B'Shvat, and as well as, okay, we'll get to the next thing. That we do have, okay? And now what does that mean? Nobody knows what it means either, because, like, what's the point?
Do we say, what's it called?
Namatzach?
Yeah.
It's a machlek. Big machlek. If you're looking like the people talking about it, it's like, yeah. But Tachna is something that's recorded, that it's not said on Tu B'Shvat. They were like, it's very interesting when I explain this. There was one shtut, so in the Minhag Ashkenaz and like later Minhag Ashkenaz it says, in Frankfurt and so on, they don't say Tachnan, but in Vermeise and in one other place, I forgot the name, they do. And they said, and Rabbi Yosef Shamish, who is Minhag Vermeise, says, you know why? Because we had a big town. So Ashkenaz, they were mostly very, very small. They were like 3 minyanim, like the big Mayim, again, so you hear of like very small, like 30 people all day. Or I don't know exactly the number, but very small. But over there it was big. That's why if you think a lot of Minhag Ashkenaz only work for like very small communities. Anyways, but and over there they had a big community. So every day there was a bris, or every second day. So they never said Tachna basically. They said, okay, if there's a bris every day, no problem. But we can't like also skip on Tu B'Shvat. That would be too much. So whenever they had an excuse, so they compensated for all the brises they had. That's what it says. It's very interesting. It reminds me of like in Monroe they had this problem, you know? Yeah, exactly. So in Kiryas Yoel, it's very weird. So I think they changed it recently because of for the same logic. So in Kiryas Yoel, their minhag was that whenever there's a bris in the whole town, they don't say Tachnan. So normal places like if it's in your minyan or something. They said, what do you mean? It's a shtut. So a shtut doesn't say in the Shechonach minyan, it says a shtut. So they used to have, I was there, they used to have a light in front of the Baltfila that turns on when you say Tachnan. At some point, it was off all year besides for Yom Ha'atzmaut. Because then, even I think at some point they realized that this doesn't work. But it's the same kind of concept. Anyways. Okay, so this is interesting. So now the story that I want to talk about is mainly something that happens here. Or I want to try to explain it because I had a whole chat. Okay, now by the way, there's another thing. So that's historical fact number 2. Historical fact number 3. So one is the fact of the halacha and the agriculture, which nobody really knows about, by the way, because in reality you could do whatever you want. I want to make my criticism of the agricultural theories. You hear them about Pesach and Sukkot also. They're overrated because agriculture exists more or less, but it doesn't mean that you have to organize your calendar according to that. You could live in whichever society you want and do whatever you want with the calendar, more or less, besides for certain crazy things.
The main criticism isn't that. I mean, if you want to criticism, is this is the claim. I'm not saying the accuracy is that every A&E society that has a holiday around those 2 times, it seems very coincidental they managed to go free and live in booth exactly those exact same times.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. That makes sense. I'm not saying that's fine. But okay, I spoke about this more on Sukkot. I don't remember if it was recorded or anything. I'm not saying that does make sense, but I think that the causality here is understood wrongly because you have to understand what causality in here means at all.
Which society? Sorry, I missed that.
Ancient Near East, A&E. It just means two books that people read, okay? Whenever people say this.
It means Gilgamesh and what's the other one?
I know.
The Sumerian list and things like that. And above Babylonia also. And there's Babylonian stuff also. For Rosh Hashanah. Anyways, the point is, no, that's not the point. The point is what forces you. What's the reason that you're doing it? It's not the same as saying people assume that people have this. Let me say it like that. People have this assumption is relevant here. We have always this we could do whatever we want because we live in cities, and for the most part you could make Purim and Chanukah and Purim, just historical reasons and so on. But people that live the Chvais Nishvan, they had to have their holiday at a certain period because that's when the harvest was, and that's what forces it. It's like a cause that forces it to be that way. And unlike us, this is why we try to change. People have all these theories. That's why people later change the reasons because those reasons didn't make sense to them or didn't force them, didn't really cause it anymore. That's the kind of logic that people often assume, and that's the logic that I think is totally made up. It's wrong. Because you could definitely be a farmer. Maybe it's more geschmack and maybe things like that, but it doesn't force anything.
The holidays are always religious based. After this reason,
that's also true.
Religious based, and if you're going to the temple, you got to bring the harvest. So the only time you've ever brought the temple is when the harvest completed, and therefore when you're doing that, you're going to have going everyone else.
I think that you don't have to anything. You don't have to anything. It might work, it might not. You don't have to anything, and actually. And there's other criticisms to make of this, but I think that
it's also based off,
again, when you say based off, okay, I'm going to stop here. When you say based off, you mean to say that's what forces it to be that way, or that allows it to be that way. There's 2 things. Number 1, because you could say something like most people that are. I'm not having a good example. But you have to remember the difference between causing things or forcing things to be that way, necessitating things to be that way, and allowing them. If you say, I don't, but there's no such thing as naturally between humans. That's another thing. Yeah, but that's another. That's not true. There's not about humans. Humans, no humans are natural. I mean, not natural in the same way that think of causality and natural science. Because there's a harvest, doesn't force me to make a Yom Tov. It might allow me to make a Yom Tov if, like I say, if you need to have a lot of food, it might allow you. That could be, but it doesn't force you, which means that it's not the cause. It could be that since I want to make a Yom Tov for Yitzias Mitzrayim or whatever, the only time I could do it is this. That could be also not necessarily true because usually these things are slightly overrated. And whenever someone projects himself into a totally different kind of organization where he says well, they must have done it that way because, and we don't must.
Culture, so we can't assume.
Yes, but we can't also assume the opposite. Exactly. We also can't assume the opposite. So I think that if you actually look into things, you get surprised often how much freedom there always is in human societies. For example, okay, I'll give you, no, I'm going to stop here because I'm getting off topic. Okay. Point is, that's number 1, and relative to here, I saw some, for example, the thought that people have in Bshvat goes like this sometimes. Very often people, and there's 2 contradictory pshutim, but just should show you how these very seemingly natural and reasonable historical pshutim are nonsense. Or at least don't actually explain what they pretend to explain. So, So one guy says, these guys, when I say guys, like serious people say these things. One guy says, so we find, like I said, like as early as Ashkenaz, whenever Ashkenaz started, they started having Tu B'Shvat as like their list of holidays. How holy and how chvaisnish, but it's part of the like special days, which we don't find before, at least not in the, well, not much. Let's assume this, not in the level of knowing like what the minhag was. So people say, so okay, of course, when you're in Israel and you're doing mitzvah Lizbah, then okay, it's a fact, it's a mitzvah. You don't have to make a Yom Tov out of it. It's just mitzvahs. Masha and when you live in Germany somewhere, and you're learning Gemara like Hilchas Tu B'Shvat, and there's nothing to do with you, so you try to invent yourself some kind of connection.
So that doesn't make any sense.
So that's, of course, many people say this. Many serious people say this. They say maybe it's like a Zeichel Mikdash, or like it's something like that. Yeah.
What we do every Zeichel. What's our Yom Tov for Chayshal?
Besides, then I ask you a kasha. You have one kasha. Why don't we do it on Chayshal?
All the other Chayshal.
But no, but the answer is that Chayshal is already a Yom Tov. So by the way, there are like very old piyutim and also less old piyutim for every Chodesh that like if you look probably on Chayshal, I'm sure it says Rosh Hashanah L'Masar B'Hem. Or if you look in the Loach Dava Be'ita, what's it called? I'm sure he reminds you to do something with your behemoth. That's one question. Okay, you could like have a counter example because there's Yom Tov, there's things that we don't do. Okay. But it's also just a conjecture, and I also have. You could also see people saying the opposite pshat, and I'm very clearly saying the opposite thing. Like, then people discover that there's these poems, there's these ancient piyuts for Tu B'Shvat, and there's like Eretz Yisrael poems. So say, that's why. So they were Eretz Yisrael, so they were like part of the nature. So you have to decide if it works with being part of the nature or being not part of the nature. You can't have both.
It's confirmation bias because you always find this way to predict your hypothesis.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it works for both, and the experiments never prove anything. But both of them sound very nice, like sounds very reasonable. If you tell it to a person, it's like, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And then we have the Zionists that like Taka, you try to use Tu B'Shvat very explicitly as a connection to the land in some way, which also actually doesn't work.
But it's another thing. Associated with intelligence, and you can tell the guy it is or it isn't, and the guy can think of B'Shvat Pshat.
Exactly. So right? Very good. So therefore, these Pshatim are very Shvach Pshatim.
You have to test it.
Although they sound very reasonable, you could test it when you see the guy saying the other Pshat the other way also. I'm not sure how you like test. Like this is the problem with history. You can't test. I'm not.
You can't test
I don't know how you can test. Like that's why you can't test. Let's say you came to the wrong class. Next week, a different week. The right class. I don't know. You can test some, but the question is, does it explain anything? So do we have Tu B'Shvat because we're not in Israel? Do we do it because we are in Israel? Well, these are the opposite things, and they both sound very like pshat. Not if you say a drash that it's because of the shapsei tzvi, then you're stamashig. But if you say this, no, both of them are just as mashig. or maybe one of them is true, but you have to have a better way of figuring out which one is true. Okay. So now I want to say a different shtickle there. The most serious source about Tu B'Shvat was this tshuva, which was written by someone we don't know who. There's a machlokes if it's Rabbeinu Gershon or Rabbi Yitzchok bar Avram, which is a very big difference, but it doesn't make a difference for me. It's a difference of the names of the people. These people, they think that it's printed and it's like found in all the Ashkenaz tshuvas and tshuvas Maram Rothenberg and all of his friends and students. They all quote this. He didn't write this from before Maram Rothenberg, so it's either from Ritzba, which is who some people bring it, or from even before Rabbeinu Gershon. And he came up with this new halacha. Okay, and I thought that if I read it like as a story, I can understand what's going on, or I can get at a point. And his halacha was like this: it was a question. Someone called him up with a shaila that they wanted to make a tanis. So it doesn't say why they wanted to make a tanis, but I'm assuming that because they had some problems. That's usually why people make tanis. They feel they're doing something wrong, or they had some tzura, and it says Masechtas Tanis that if whenever tzura you have, you gotta do a tanis. So I'm assuming that this is talking about a problematic time for the Jews, that they have to feel that they have to fast. But then someone came and said that maybe we shouldn't fast. Why shouldn't we fast? Because Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat fast. So obviously in the question, whoever, apparently it says this is a real story that happened. I'm assuming that this tshuva was a real tshuva, like it was written to someone that asked him the question. And someone asked him this question, like there was I assume that the shul had a board meeting where they were kaveh tanis, as they probably did, in order to make a tanis. And some guy came and said, no, you can't do it this week because it's Tu B'Shvat. It's scheduling conflict. Tu B'Shvat is not a tanis time. And they asked Rabbi Yitzchok, or whoever it was, to pass it to them, to tell them what they should do. That was the story. I just made up this whole story, but it says in this question. Also, I think, and this is something that I think in general, we have all these like days that we don't fast. Yom Masurim B'Tanis, like from Megillas Tanis already. People seem to think that just means that we don't fast. Like someone told me, like, I want to celebrate your birthday. So, Mi'at Hashem, every time when it's going to be your birthday, if I'll have a bad dream that day, I won't fast. Like, that makes no sense. If my father will die that week, I won't do the hesped that day, I'll do it another day. That's how I'll respect your, like, your special day. That's how people like, us the best with the tanis. That's what it means, right? Don't do a hesped. Don't do it. When do we do a hesped and tanis? If you need to, if you're in the mood of fasting, if you have a tzara. That doesn't make any sense. Nachon?
Are you trying to ask me seriously? Like,
No,
of course not.
So...
But you know that from Hanukkah already. Hanukkah wasn't really celebrated. There was just a day for everything.
Exactly. So Elamai, whenever it says us the best with tanis, it means make a shtickle seder. If a big seder, a small seder, at least eat supper. Make some kind of party. And of course, like, to come to the party, don't fast. This is not a day for... Don't go to the hesped thing, come to the happy thing. Exactly, and the Piram Kuttas, I have a lot of rights that this Pshat is true. So obviously, all the Hesped V'Tanis also days means days that people actually had some level of party. How big the party was like Purim?
More like the Satmar in the corner.
More like the L'chaim from the free. Okay, epis a level from partiness. Or at least, again, like it's weird because you get it like it's halacha, you have to. I don't know. People used to have parties in these days. And that's the Batla Megillas Tanis is really a factual question. Do we still have parties or not? If you come to shul on Yud Zayin, do they give l'chaim or not? Well, if they don't, then probably just like move on. Yeah. If they do, and then in that person, the Mandoma B'loi Batla, he used to give tikkun every time when there was a... Yeah. Now obviously, right? Otherwise it doesn't make any sense. This is halacha. Yeah. Okay.
I'm afraid it might say tachnan, we can make tikkun quickly.
Same with tachnan, of course. If you don't want to, the whole thing of not saying, I don't know. If you don't say tachna, you have to at least do a tikkun. If not, it's not, you're not yoytz. It's not saying tachna. So obviously the story here isn't that someone came with a chash. The guy said, we have a party scheduled, so why are you making a tanis on my party?
Not that, because here, how late was the solution? It could be, like then it was entered into like a promise, which was like a holy day. You don't know.
I could say that. I still...
Right.
You see, this is a funny thing that you're doing. I had this thought, but it's a funny thing, because like, when it's Chazal, he can just do whatever he wants, or we can assume that my logic force, but since we know, I don't know.
Nowadays, in Lakewood, this is exactly what works. In this classroom today...
In Lakewood, it works like this, that's true, but right, so when did it stop working like this?
Pre-Chazalian culture, whatever it is, or modern culture.
So when did it work like this? You're right that I don't know. I'm telling you, but I don't care, you see?
If it was no such thing
but
like
since,
culture, I'd be masking to you.
Since I'm not really doing history, I don't care, because I'm telling you what it has to be. Even now, it has to be in Lakewood. What should be, how do they call it? The normative claim is that you should give l'chaim. In fact, that Litvaks and Lakewood don't do it is not my problem. That's their problem. I do think that some Hasidim understand this, and they take a gift taken on every day that they have an excuse and so on. So they're more like Leibat Megillas Tanis, or whatever. They have a new Megillas Tanis. But so it's true. What you're saying is true, but I'm not really making a claim about the history. I do assume that if people said we shouldn't do it, they probably had because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what's my like sort of hechrech here. Because okay, we don't say tachna, so what's shaykh is not fasting? There must be something that causes people to think there's a question. He said, oh, it's Rosh Hashanah, so like what does that mean? Yeah, you don't have to agree with this. I mean, it's not true. It's not proof, but in any case, it's what should be. I do think, by the way, there was, I forgot who said that you have to make a party on Purim Kutim because it says Asabas of the Tanis. That was one of the Rishonim from the Bali Atosis from the same area. I'm forgetting who. And what it says actually is, he made a party. It literally says, he made a party. It doesn't say, and it was built on the same kind of lamdas. So there is the Rishonim actually that very clearly understand it this way.
Right, for sure. The absolute affecting the region is hard to you.
So again, it depends. I told you, it depends on exactly who wrote this, on which day, and in which shtut, and how many pizza they sold here. I don't know. How is it possible to know that? I don't know. I'm telling you what should be. Anyway, so that was the shayla. So that's one level of the question. Very serious question. And then they had an even bigger serious question. I think that the question is even more serious than that, because I think that, see, I don't know when people started being so funny and like, well, it's halacha, so you have to do it. I always assume that even now most people are not really like that. Just a few people in Lakewood.
Maybe the people who aren't like people aren't like that.
Exactly.
But reality is the people who make the rules are like that.
Some of them are still like these kind of rules, but I don't know if all of them are like that. So
I'll tell you that story. The two people went to seminar. One person went to this religion is the best religion ever. They have rules to use a bathroom. Like, it's amazing. One says these people have their minds. They have rules how to use a bathroom. Right?
but that's a different thing. By the way, every culture has rules how to use the bathroom. Nothing new about us. We're just silly people that wrote it down. Well, actually, nobody really follows what it's telling. Everyone does what their culture tells them to anyways. Besides for, again, a few funny people. So it's not really, it's just like making certain things explicit in certain ways. Shine, I don't know.
We've lost the last some rules.
I don't know. Anyways, that's not my...
Let's go back to something.
What I want to say is, no, it's a serious question, but I have to say pshat. I can't say, oh, maybe he was also stupid. That's not a way of learning pshat. Okay, maybe. And therefore, then we could stop. But I'm assuming that it makes sense. So if it makes sense, then there's a very much more serious question. Because the serious question is like this. Should you, like, I don't like to say if it's like, should you be happy? But there's like a real conflict. And the real conflict is, how do you live? Oh gosh, that's the real conflict. Because on the one hand, we're like fasting people. We should be fasting. And should be fasting is not just because like it says in Shulchan Aruch that if there's a tzara, you fast. Like these are people that felt that way. Or they live that way. And we also live that way. I mean, I don't know if we like to fast or whatever it is. They live that way. Like it's a problem, whatever. I don't know what they were fasting for, but I'm sure it was an important thing, the people, or at least important enough in their eyes. And so we should fast, but also we're trying to be Jewish. Now this is very important because like I think, and this is like another way of reading this whole tase that we don't fast as, even better way, besides for the fact that you do have to give l'chaim, there's just something more serious. Because it says like the default, what's the longest? Like there's a lot of different levels of days in the year. There's Yom Shabbos, which is also B'chol Melech, Yom Tov, that you only do a lot of Eichel Nefesh, Chveis Isri Chag, where, I don't know, whatever, a whole bunch of levels, Chanukah, Purim. And there's another level, the last level basically, is called we don't fast. The smallest kind of Yom Tov. Like the minimum viable Yom Tov is days we don't fast. Makes sense. No, I said, right. But wait, so I want to that one makes no sense.
Historically, I know how it was very...
Lamdus, okay, I'm saying the Lamdus. Okay, so let me try to think. So what that means is, I understand, but let's assume that this does have a meaning. What it means is something like this, that every other day, so how do you call it the other days? How is a regular day called? A regular day is a Yom Shemis Anim Vay. Normal Tuesday is a fast day. And actually, I think this is historically true. Because if you like read the reason there's so much of these conversations, right? We're confused. We have this conversation. We're all living and fasting and whatever. Then we want to know if this is this mitzvah or not. Who cares? It doesn't make. You have to difference what drusha you say about the mitzvah. If this guy says this mitzvah, that guy doesn't make any difference. And the same thing with all these like misanim and whatever. We don't have this. But originally, and again in the Ashkenazi communities where these kind of questions were born, people are more, I don't know, this is a crazy historical generalization, but if the way you read how they're living and how they're doing, they are fasting all the time. Most of them. Everyone is fasting all the time, everyone is sad all the time. I don't know if they're sad, but they should be sad if they're not. And it's the you know, my friend, I have a friend that really hates this. They're not different than Litvish. Litvish are not sad, they're something else. It's Ashkenaz Messiah. I don't think this Messiah exists anymore. I mean, maybe in some Gilgal. Because I have a friend that told me, if you're a Namal guy, then the summer is like very happy time, If you're Ashkenaz like this, it starts off with 7 weeks of Sfira. Finally, we get past it. 3 weeks later, there's 3 weeks of, then there's El, forget it, the whole thing doesn't exist. So that's the way in which it seems to look, and not only El, a whole year. The Ashkenaz people literally came up with this thing, we had too much fun on Yom Tov, we gotta fast Bahab afterwards. Can't be God likes this, we gotta fast. It's like the way they live, and they by the way, if you, I mean, again,
I hate to take the historicism.
I don't know if it's European. It's certain.
But America, religion is a love story, and for Europe, the drama, the tragedy. Maybe. I don't know. I'm making fun of it now, but there's probably better ways of saying it. But there's at least like a makam for this understanding.
And there's also like, I mean, they have tanis and they have gezairas and they have crusades, all kind of things going on all the time. And that's, they definitely self-understand themselves this way. Like they write about themselves in this like crying way all the time. I forgot how that guy calls it, the tears theory of Jewish history or something like that. He has a name for it, I'm trying to forget, like a fancy English word. In any case, that's the life they're living. So now it becomes very real, because like the whole chakira stuff, like something gets to this mitzvah. What? No, there's a different word. I don't remember. The point is like this. So the point is like for them, like that's why Suda's mitzvah makes a big difference, because there's all these guys going around who like, I don't ever go to parties. Okay, the Suda means a party. We're all confused. Suda just means a party. I don't go to parties. I'm not Purish, whatever. I'm a serious guy. Or if it's Suda's mitzvah, a different din. By the way, the Maram Ratmeg, I never gave this thing, but the whole thing with Hanukkah it's all messed up, because really Maram Ratmeg is saying you don't have to go to every Hanukkah party. Calm it. That's all he's saying. You don't have to go like that. Anyways, everyone knows that Hanukkah, you talked about this, Hanukkah is not a mitzvah to have a party. But Maram Ratmeg said this, and the reason he said this was because he was saying, he was talking about a different discussion. He was not talking about the Chiyuv L'Suda Hanukkah. That was not his problem. His problem was that there's like a thing in Psuchim which says that Talmid Chacham shouldn't go to too many parties, unless it's a mitzvah. Like if it's a chasana, and even then you shouldn't really go, only if it's Talmid Chacham getting married, if it's Hamuritz, it's an Avayra B'chlal. So they had this, and I read in the Rambam talks about it by Chilul Hashem, they had this concept of or at least they made explicit this, I think we have this concept also, but they had this concept of like, if you consider yourself a Talmid Chacham, you shouldn't be hanging out at too many parties. Some parties. Sometimes, but not too much. And the question about Hanukkah parties was like, is this a party where you should hang out at? And that says, no, you don't have to. That's all. It wasn't like about the whole, later the Paskin made it into that, but it's not really what it's about. And the same thing is here. Like I said, the Basidas mitzvah, it's the same thing. Like, I don't go to parties. Okay, if it's a mitzvah, okay, so now we have the question. So is my mitzvah a mitzvah? Like, is it my made a neder? So now we have to, then you get into these nitty-gritty problems.
These historical understandings that you criticize constantly.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you Bshvat and Halach. I'm telling you Bshvat and Halach. And no, I know my whole sheet. I told you this is a history sheet. It's a Bshvat and the Halach. No, it's a Bshvat and the Halach. It's a Shalom. If the Halach is lafuke, the din of Talmid Chacham doesn't go to a Siddas Reshis, it's called, or basically a party. Or the Pshat is that it's a Shalom, you have to wash on Hanukkah. It's two different questions, two different lamdas, and people are confusing it. A lot of people. And the same thing with this mitzvah, and the same thing with all these. I mean, here Gzeiras Tanis, it's similar. In other words, like we always basically need to fast. So sometimes we manage to fast, sometimes not, and sometimes this week it's been a good week, so we don't fast. And that's why they have that's why like it's a certain way of living. That's why they have so many days where like this is the day that you don't fast, and that's a real thing because okay, so Baruch Hashem, today is a normal day, and it's not normal to us every day. When you fast, it's not normal, but there's to some extent where it's the opposite in this world. Yeah, you could say that. I don't know if there was no food. I don't know. But it's also because of like fasting being. By the way, fasting is not a bad thing. Nowadays it's in style. Intermittent fasting, you don't know? It's in style. If it works or not, it's in style. Fasting is in style, so you shouldn't tack on this. But there was a thing. Like most of a normal day is a fasting day. That's why I'm saying. And there were many people. I don't know how many, but on every show there was 2 people that there are many was to fast, or every weekday, or something like that. So therefore, it makes a big. And like I was saying before, it's you have to have a party. It does change what kind of day it is if this is not a fasting day. Right. So the shamash has to share a fast stand. Like nowadays, the shamash never has to say that because nobody's fast. Why would anyone fast? If he's fasting, it's his problem. But then, like every third person is fasting. Okay, he's fasting only. Like you really read people. Like every Thursday he would fast. Like a very frum guy, he fasted every Thursday. Well, shaykhs, why? I don't know who. Like why would you do that? Nowadays, nobody thinks like this. This is not history, just a fact. Okay, it's history, but it's like just a fact. It's not because I would say it's not because of the stars this pshat that even poskim have. Because people always say like nowadays people are shvach. It's nonsense. Nobody is shvach. It's just a minig. In other words. You could do it. You could live that way if you want. Nowadays, also nothing's forcing. That's why when I say I'm against this kind of causality, I'm against saying that it forces you. Nothing is stopping you from fasting every weekday, and you'll be healthy. By the way, you'll be as healthy as the guy that used to do it. Yeah, you often read in Hilchos. Yeah, okay. If you're only about social credit, I'm asking. Well, you could make a group of people. Nobody's stopping you of having a friend group that fasts all the time. I actually know people that do this, and they're fine. They're living their life. No, like Paskim often people have this is I don't say this. relative to fast, people often have, like, even in serious paskim, we see this, like, we have to be Michael and Tanias because people are schwach. Or then there's Oibacham that say, no, schwach, come on. Or have you been to the doctor? Is anyone schwach? What are you talking about? There's too much food. They say, no, but they're psychologically schwach. Both of these things are nonsense. I mean, again, maybe if someone is not used to it,
Psychologically, it's true because it doesn't have the same.
if you say socially, if you don't have support, and also, of course, if someone eats every day 6 meals and then one day doesn't eat, ich verstehe.
The reason why this is my thing, but one of the things is that psychologically, all the fairy tales of the HFO always have horrible endings. For a simple reason, because they want to train the kids.
Okay,
might die. Right? Now they always rewrite them as a happy ending, so Harry wins.
Yeah, I know this.
Right, there's a tragedy. There used to be a tragedy, now it's a tragedy.
Yeah, people don't know enough about tragedy, but tragedy still happened. It didn't change the reality. Just that some people don't know how to deal with it.
When every 5 kids were dying, now it's much less.
Yeah, that doesn't make such a big difference as you think. Okay. You should go, whatever. I have enough tragedy. I can give you a list of tragedies if you want. There's also that, whatever. The kids say, whenever you start to make these things, I'm not sure. But the point is, you could, if you want, you could think about tragedy. You could read like the tragedy part of the newspaper, and so on. And you could also, but anyways, I'm going to get back to this. So on a Malotog is a fasting day, and you could say because of Charbon Beis Hamikdash, or which is also like too historical for me. But you could say things like that, or just because of like a depressive view of life, or you could say like you're saying that the life was more depressing. Okay, maybe. This is a hard thing to say because it's a fact. The fact might be true, but you don't know if that actually causes the psychology of people to be that way. You assume that, and it's of course of subjective because something outside of you. But that doesn't mean that that's the experience of our people. I'm pretty sure I actually have some experience of this. I don't think that anyone before they had smartphones was less happy.
I'm joking.
It's true that it factually is useful. I agree. It's very useful. You should get one if it's useful to you. But it's weird. I know it's objectively useful. I know, but I'm just anti. I don't like the techno pessimism too. It's also dumb.
Medical care has improved tremendously since then.
But we're talking about now. Now you're talking about psychology. You have to decide if you're talking about does it. Let's test it out. Do the people that work in the Chevra Kadisha, are they less happy?
My argument wrong.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say I don't think people are happier nowadays because happiness is a fact. Every person's personality is such a state of happiness.
Okay, very good. So it doesn't
People are
help.
less resilient nowadays because they don't face much tragedy.
Okay,
Much less
maybe.
resilience. Psychological weakness and the fact that people
I wonder
are
if that's
resilient.
true.
It's like
I wonder if there's a way
high
to
rates of
actually.
depression, high rates of anxiety.
I wonder if that's true though. It's possible, but I don't know. In any case, I'm definitely going to say, and it's possible that that's the fact, but I'm definitely going to insist that it's not necessarily the fact. In other words, if you want, you could be as resilient as you want. Maybe you have to practice it. Maybe you have to, like everything else in human life, you got to work on your midas, like it says in all the. It's possible.
People don't change. No, you could definitely be resilient.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the default. It's possible. People say these things. I have no idea. Okay, I just don't know. But anyways, back to the thing. In any case, I don't think that it's true that you die from fasting more than you did before. That's nonsense. Or do you get like psychological pain? That's also not true. It's true that if you're not used to it. No, it is true. People that are not used to fasting think it's a big deal, but it's not really a big deal. I mean, again, if you're a healthy person and everything, if you're not, then ask your doctor or whatever, or a psychiatrist. It changes your body, it changes your balance, everything. I'm not saying it's not a big thing, but it's not like, I don't know how I got into this whole discussion. The point is, there's now on a Malotog is a fasting day, which is like how life is. And then there's a whole list of days where Baruch Hashem, you don't have to fast today.
Back to Bshvat. I'm trying to figure out how to Bshvat.
To Bshvat is a day where you don't have to fast. Even though there's a big tzura and there's a war going on in Israel and a lot of people dying, all kind of things. And we should be guys at Tanis. In other words, whatever. It's a matziv, it's royal Tanis. But now we have to Bshvat. That's what he comes up with this chiddush, and that's why it makes a lot of sense. Now I made it instead of like this funny din of like us the best, us the betanis, mit the betanis. There's like we have to sort of structure, and this is one of the like main things that humans do, that human culture is like structuring time. You have to structure your time in a way that accounts for the sadness and accounts for non-sadness. And we have all these like ways, and there's like big ways, like there's like there's interesting models that people have for like describing this, but. In any case, that's why that's like there's like big Yom Tovim, like where you go totally all out, and there's like Purim where you just get shikker, and then there's Chanukah where you only get a little shikker, whatever it is, and then there's Tu B'Shvat where you at least don't fast. So like, in other words, life can go on. That's the yesod, and that's why I think. So then he came. So this is what he did, Rabbi Yitzchok. He said, I have a shtickle Torah from the Mishnah. And that's how he like solved the problem. And this is also something that we have to understand what it means to solve your dilemma by finding a raya from the Gemara. I think it's an underexplained thing. Because like we have the model of like, we're going to prove it. Well, this is, come on, like you read the tshuva, you'll see it doesn't prove nothing. And he wasn't stupid enough to think that it proves something. Like, yeah, mamish is hachlich from the Mishnah that it's the Yom Osir. Like, I can give a pshatel vaket. Like, everyone knows that. It's not really that. What he's you doing something. Okay, this is a very general discussion, but he's doing something, like he's trying to like show, either showing other people that what he's saying has like a precedent or something like that, or he's like really trying to explain himself in terms of the Gemara, in terms of the halacha that he has, that he inherited. And what he says is like this. He says that it says in the Mishnah, but it's Shunim, and one of them is Bshvat. Now, what do you think? Fasten of Shana? That's sort of what he says. He does. and then he says, oh, and of course he'll tell me, well, it's not Rosh Hashanah, it's not a Tanis, it's not even a Rosh Chodesh. You're right, but there's some connection. So it's like a Hekesh. He says it's like a make a Hekesh, a Hekesh. I don't know what he calls it.
Actually, he says not what he says.
He does. That's the first thing he says. He says first he says Lemetzina Cloud Tanis Rosh Hashanah, and then he says, and it says, and there's like this source of how to read this here. It doesn't matter. And then he says, because it says in the Mishnah together, the continually b'hadei adode, so it's similar. Although, so just like there's no tanis in the other ones, the fourth one, which is the which doesn't have a tanis either. Although of course there's a difference. Yeah, then he brings proof that you could do such a raya. Then he like a meta proof. Then he has a proof that if you tell me that groupings the Mishnah don't teach anything, I'll show you that a Gemara. Actually, I think that this is true. There's many more Gemaras that do this kind of thing. I don't know why he like had to find this one. That's later in the end. He goes back to do this. He says, yeah, the reason why you can do this is because how do you call it? Because have an eye. The Gemara says that we compare 2-3 things that were listed in one list, that they have, that they're similar. Actually, many times the Gemara does this, and many times the Gemara says no, maybe it's not. So it's not clear to me what level of raya this is that you could work with such a tzishta.
You don't fast. You don't need a raya for that.
That's the first thing. So if you read the first line as a separate argument, then you could say something like that. But firstly, it's not true, because everyone knows that there were many goyim that said that Hashanah you do fast.
Yeah.
This is a very weird thing to say, because it's like shvach raya. If he would say like, so that's what the second argument makes more sense. If he says like every one of these are Rosh Chodesh, and then really Rosh Chodesh we don't fast, including Rosh Hashanah, and therefore it's like we could assume that the fourth one has something connected, something like that. I don't know. I'm telling you it's a shvach raya. Like Rosh Hashanah you don't fast. Do you fast on Rosh Hashanah? Probably he assumed that you don't. Obviously he didn't hold of this shit that you could fast on Rosh Hashanah. Makes sense. But Rosh Hashanah means that it's a Yom Tov. Is that the point? Because it says Rosh Hashanah, man.
Instead of like, it says a schula.
Yeah, I could make a lot of theories about this idea that something that's connected in the Mishnah is connected.
You have 4 Rosh Hashanahs, right? You have Rosh Hashanah, then you have Hashanah Rabbah, then you have Chanukah, then 2 Rosh Hashanah.
That's a different Mishnah. That's a Mishnah that says in the Achronim's Mishnah.
Then like Vaymer is the next Yom Adin, right?
But Rosh Hashanah here doesn't mean Yom Adin. That's the next Mishnah. The Rosh Hashanah here just means beginnings of the year, literally. And it's actually a weird Mishnah, because I think that this Mishnah is really funny, because like you have Masechtas Rosh Hashanah. It's not about the Arba Rosh Hashanah, it's about one Rosh Hashanah.
It makes no sense, because you can't give your middle of the month. That's a slight issue.
Why, you can't have it in the middle of the month? Why not? It's the beginning of the year for trees, for Le'inyan Hilchas trees.
Everything's the first of the month.
You're with Beis Shammai, very nice. You're with Beis Shammai, but this according to Beis. By the way, I think it's opposite. Maybe all beginning of the year should begin in the middle of the month, and the ones that are in the begin and when they're in the beginning of the month are the outliers. How about that?
Was one regular and 3 outliers? It's kind of hard to buy.
No, actually, so Nisan is not clear if the Mishnah means Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It might mean Pesach. I mean, the Gemara has both of them. Tishrei, it could be also mean Sukkot. In any case, you probably should know that Rosh Hashanah is really about Sukkot. And which one is the other one? Elul. I don't know how to make that one. It's anyways Machlok, because Gemara already says that there's maybe it's really 3 Rosh Hashanahs. Okay. it's a weird Mishnah anyways, because it's like, this Mishnah is like doing this, okay, but I don't want to get, that's one like way aspect we should explore, which is like, this Mishnah is explicitly doing a comparison of things that don't connect. Like when you say, it's not a Rosh Hashanah, it's like, you say, it's Rosh Hashanah Le'ilah, and they say, no, but it's only a, then you should ask this question on the Mishnah, not on the guy that eats too many dates on Tu B'Shvat. You should ask it on the Mishnah. We got more. The Mishnah is the one that did this funny thing, and maybe the Mishnah, so either it's right, that the Mishnah is trying to teach you a din, like Hilchas is a Tanis. I don't think that that's really the point. I don't think it's even his point. I think that the Mishnah is trying to do something which is much broader than that. He's trying to organize the year, or trying to like tell you like how many ways you can organize the year.
How does Tu B'Shvat actually develop?
I don't know. So my think's like this. So I want to tell you my like sort of historical shot in this tickle Torah that he had. I think that what he's saying is like this. I'm living in Germany, and actually he lived in whatever it was called then, and nowadays it's called Tzarfas in Hebrew, but it was not, France didn't exist in those days. But we're living in this like dark ages, and like I said, I think that their self-understanding what they live in a dark age, and we didn't make this up. And now we learn Gemara, we learn Halacha, we learn Chumash, and so on. They're not in this like dark place where we are. They're not fasting all the time, and they knew this, by the way. The Ashkenaz people that were fasting all the time, they knew that in the times of like people say this, that the Torah say this. They knew that the Torah doesn't say this. They thought that was their correct thing to do. So most of his days are like regular days. They're not in the Gemara. His days that he's doing, like Tuesday, January 7th, 12/22, whatever the date is, something like that. It's not a Yiddish date. It's a Goyish date. He's living in the Goyish world. That's the emperor or whatever that controls his life, that makes the dates, that makes the taxes and everything. So that's a very sad life. So you should be fasting in that. On all those dates, you should fast. Now, any date that says in the Chumash, you shouldn't fast, basically. Because those are the Jewish dates. Those are the dates that take you out of the being stuck in this exile.
That's your pshat.
Yeah, that's my anti-historical pshat. These are, because like any date basically that says it's a Mishnah, like it's a Yiddish heilige date. What does it mean heilig? Is it really a simcha? Just the union of mass? I don't know. It's definitely better than the dates that the emperor gives me. So, and I think that's what he's psychologically or like trying to get at.
What's nowadays?
That's what it nowadays also. And by the way, I think this is what's always this word that I think explains most of it, because it's always, I don't know. Now then there's the Zionist aspect that I don't. The Zionists did try to redo the whole Torah, including Tu B'Shvat, and Tu B'Shvat is actually one of the less successful ones.
Already.
Yeah, but it's the wrong, like you say, because it's the wrong time. If they do it in Nisan, it would make sense. Since they do it in Shvat, it doesn't make any sense. But
They have some good songs.
yeah, then there's a third pshat, which is like we should care about the Environment Day or something. That's Mamash Hantige Day pshat. No, it's not. That's not how to. I don't know. But what I think that what the minig, I care about like the Yiddish minig. The Yiddish minig makes Tu B'Shvat a thing because it's a date that says in the Mishnah. Like imagine, I wrote I told a story that I was once by a Chassidish Yid, and it was Shabbos, and he was eating what they eat Shabbos, eggs with liver and onions. I said, it's a Mishnah, this dish. It says in the Mishnah in Shabbos. Mishnah. So he's eating the Mishnah.
Yeah.
So that's like the way a Yid's supposed to live. Because like, where does Yom Tovim come from? If you're like in a...
Right? They don't say tiny something. They do Alpha Adam.
Yeah, okay, that's that's a Purim Torah. That makes sense for Matzah Purim. I don't know if it works. Shivsa, yeah, that works for Purim. But it's in general, because we're text-based, our like world isn't these texts. The days that make sense to us are the ones that are mentioned there, that are worked with there. So saying, of course, this is the date that. Same thing with Kabbalah. Kabbalah is always is just a Kabbalah is very. It's also fake. So Tu B'Shvat is also fake Kabbalistically. Which again is a good thing, according to me.
The difference is from Kabbalah, how exactly?
Because there's authoritative Kabbalah and non-authoritative Kabbalah. And authoritative Kabbalah doesn't really have Tu B'Shvat. I mean, like, of course, there's always drash that you could make. It's Kabbalistically invented by whoever wrote that shtickle in Chem B'Siyamin, which might have not been a son of Aza, whatever. Might have stolen it from someone or whatever. But whoever it is that wrote it, there's actually some earlier sources that people found, some manuscript. Who cares? The point is, their idea, well, they have a lot of ideas. I don't know. So Mekabalim, well, you want to know about Mekabalim? I don't think Mekabalim are who made Tu B'Shvat into a thing. It's the Chassidim in general, and in some ways the Mekabalim, they're continuing this kind of thing because they get excited for everything that they could find a connection to their books. And they have some more books. There's Zohar also, and so on. But it's not really about like we have this like funny way of like externalizing it, like they're trying to bring Mashiach. Well, yeah, of course they're trying to bring Mashiach, but they're trying to bring Mashiach because it says in Zerdish.
I think though, you said, I had this question the very first time I heard your share, right, the second share, and I think it's like, you're saying very Bshvat, the historian doesn't explain it, but you're still messing with the book. It doesn't explain, because when you ask a person why some people, I mean this date not because some guy 2,000 years ago ate a date. It doesn't make any sense. It's because I want to get something out of it.
And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true.
Free will. I mean, matzah. No one's forcing me because some Jew ate 2,000 years ago eat matzah. You missed the boat. You won't understand.
No, they're not forcing you, but they are causing you, at least partially. So causes, like I said, cause are a very complicated thing, and especially when you put humans into the story.
Then you say that usually they had free will, right? But
we still have, of course, we have free will, and therefore we have kavanas now. Therefore, I could tell you. So I really like this pshat that I made up today. I really like it because I agree with it. And that's probably why I say it. Whenever I say a pshat, I try to agree with it. Otherwise, it's just a historical pshat, which I don't even agree with, even in theory. Like I can understand this; it makes sense to me. Like even give different like formulations for it, like kivan sheyotza or something. But it makes sense to me because all humans are doing is like sort of imposing their meaning or imposing their structure on the world, and time is like one of the most basic ways we do it, and this is like the time that it works a little less because of me knowing more things about time. But if I would have known only the Mishnah and the rest of the world, it would have worked much better. And by the way, you could like get even more. And this is why this is the kind of pshat that is also like, if I tell you it's because, like, in other words, like this. If I tell you something like, if you want to go back to the stars, this question. If I want to tell you something like, okay, you eat. So let's say I would give, you know what a real star is? I give history. Like I made a story here where I told you the story of the board meeting and everything that doesn't say in the Shulchan Aruch, but I'm sure that's what happened. But if someone would come and say, you know, this person that wrote this tshuva, that week he was making a wedding and he didn't want them to make a fast on that day, and that's why we got stuck with this Bshvat something. That would be a star's kol pshat, which might have been, you know, who knows, maybe it happened, but it would be totally unhelpful because it wouldn't at all explain the dates on my table. Mashanik and Ma'abshat, I didn't explain the dates because that's like another, I think that's just part of the l'chaim that we have to do, and like might as well do it. It should be fruit to make sense. Like what else should it be? Think about it.
You have a grill.
Yeah. Okay, that's your chiddush. I'm asking, but I'm not against it. But I'm just saying. I'm sure it says. It says to Erusan Masabay, but don't worry. I'm sure it says, but it doesn't say the minik. But you can make such a minik.
I really did.
Very good. You hear it called?
If I said the shit, that way people start doing it with me.
Very good. If you make it, then make it.
It's mishigas. 20 people doing this, it's mamash a minik.
If you make it, then you make it. But the point is that it's. I think that you have to have a pshat that is it works, that is true in the story of the people, and is also why is also, and again, and nobody could force any human being to do anything besides for like pure force. And that's a good thing, right? Because we want things to be reasonable to us and then do them because they're reasonable to us in some level. And some level that's never going to be true because there's like some level of inertia and so on.
The Torah was written by JEPD or whatever they were, right? And they're trying to explain that's why everyone keeps what mitzvahs today. They missed the boat because it's not as explained. Because every person who keeps those mitzvahs doesn't think it's pshat. They think there was.
But then,
they're not explaining why they're keeping it.
I'll tell you what I'm trying to get away from in these kind of things. I'm trying to get away from subjectivism. Because I don't want to say that what I'm doing is disconnected, you see? When I say Zechel Masavra, Zechel Ritzpah that invented, I don't think he invented it, because like I'm saying, I think he found this source in the Gemara, but I'm pretty sure that it was before. But I don't want to say that it's just in my head. That's why I'm not happy with the kind of, I don't know what exactly you're saying, but I'm not happy with what, I don't know, these are labels. I'm not happy with subjectivism. I'm not happy, it's very much older than postmodernism, it's Protestant religion. I'm not happy with that. Why I'm not happy with that? Because that's not, firstly, it's not true. Because there is a connection with what actually happened. Some kind of connection, you have to figure out what kind. I think that this is where the theories of different kinds of causes is very useful. And we have to I did some classes on that explicitly at some point. There's many different kinds of things that we say with the word because they has a lot of meanings.
Well, like you think a good Maran reflects here, this big mime in the Torah, right? And he believes also the world was created, over many billions years ago with evolution, right? Not good thing. But he's saying Zeichel Mas Bereishis by Kiddush. He's thinking about the 6 billion years. What's he thinking?
Well, that's a question you should ask him. I don't know.
You're assuming that it's subjectivity.
You're asking about me?
What do you think he's thinking? Is this lost his mind?
I'm not sure. This is a question of like kavanas hakiddush. I'm not sure like how, but that's.
You're saying that the historicism somehow. I don't see how you could somehow.
The question is that in some sense yes, it's because of Maaseh Bereshis. Now, I don't really get the problem if that's like a different problem of interpretation. So how exactly did it work? Nobody really knows, so it doesn't matter, or it's not the point. The question is that I don't want you to say that it's not because of the Maaseh Bereshis. It is because of the Maaseh Bereshis, and you eat matzah on Pesach because of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Now, what does this because mean? The question is, what does because means? In other words, there's some causal connection, there's some chain, some kind of chain, and maybe a very complicated chain. It might have a lot of levels of freedom in it. In other words, it might have a lot of people in the chain, which means it's not a deterministic chain. Doesn't force anything, but there is a chain, a causal chain between my matzah and whatever actually happened in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Now, if you tell me what I thought actually happened didn't actually happen, that is a real argument, because then you're saying that what I thought is causing me to do it is not what's causing me. But when you say just because I thought, well, the thought is what's like the most direct link in this chain. But if you go back in the chain, then you might be making a mistake, and there still is a cause. It's not irrelevant, because if it would have, it's not like we're not living in a screen, which was invented yesterday, and whatever I think is what's the only thing that's relevant. It's relevant.
That's essentially how we do live, though. That's
what I'm disagreeing with you. No, I don't think so. Nobody lives like that. Of course not. It makes a real difference. It makes a real difference if the because is true. That's a general metaphysical position. That causes really cause things, not only in our head, even for human actions. So it has to be explained how. I don't think it's enough if you say like something like, in other words, if you say something like someone did something and it was a lie, it was a mistake, then that action turns out to have been a lie too, in some sense, because it was sourced in a lie, because it was caused by something false. So there's some falsity that transfers somehow. I don't know what that means, but it somehow transfers to the action also. Yeah, I think so. And I think that would make it somewhat false. That's a metaphysical. I'm saying it in a funny way because I don't like right now think of a clear way to say it. But I think that in some sense that's true. And maybe there's a way that you can jump. You could say, okay, I'm doing it symbolically. I'm doing it towards whatever the truth that was, then the 10,000 causes besides me was. Okay, so then you're trying to get out of this problem
every Christian,
explicitly.
Example, who believes that they're doing it for the resurrection, which never happened. So
doing what?
Their religion, the whole religion.
Yeah, then they're false. They're living a sheker, of course. If assuming that it never happened, I don't know. You were making a lot of assumptions about facts, but assuming that it never happened, and assuming that that's actually what it means. If you reinterpret it, for example, this is why reinterpretation is a very real thing. If you reinterpret it and you say something like, if you take your example of Shabbos, I don't see the big problem, because I think that this whole question of like was it 6 days or 6 million days is a very small question relative to what the meaning of Shabbos is, even according to the most basic Bshvat. That's like a detail. So people used to think that it's literal. Now we realize that it's wrong. We realize that it's wrong because of science. It doesn't matter. But we realize that it's wrong. But there's still there's something. Well, again, this is why I don't just say, although it's probably very hard to like say, what is the nimshal or something like that. And we go to the most general thing. But I do think I would say even better, right? If I would say, in other words, you used to think, something like this, and the model is very bad because, like you're saying, because human causality is weird. I don't have a very good theory of it right now, but I think that in some level it works the same way as any other causality, at least in the sense of there actually being an unbroken chain. So, for example, if I was, it's very complicated because, because the problem, we see the problem here. But for example, if you take like a physical example and you say people used to think that they fall down because the earth in them wants to be in the middle of the earth or something. Yeah. And which I think is true probably, but now they realize that it's because of something bigger than that. That's really more general rule. So in that sense, they were wrong, right? They thought that it only applies to Earth. It actually applies to everybody in the known universe, everything that has mass or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So now we know that there's not really because of the Earth pulling you. It's like the two masses attracting each other. Mm-hmm. So the sort of immediate thing that you thought is really, so he made a mistake. He didn't really fall. There's something really, he still fell. Okay. Both are true. He thought that he's falling because of the old theory of falling. And the truth is, that theory describes some of reality, so it can't be said to be entirely false. But as far as the ultimate cause was not that, it's really much deeper cause or a bigger cause, right? Or in the same way, you would say someone thought he's keeping Shabbos because God created the world 6 whatever number years ago. So that's where his very limited, which is true. God created the earth 6,000 years ago plus a bunch of years. No, you get what I'm saying. And really, it's like when you're saying Kiddush, there's 6 trillion or whatever years of evolution. However, the numbers keep on changing. Whatever the amount of number that.
Not really.
Yeah, I've read some. There's a problem, but no, not of evolution of the universe and stuff. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I'm not a cosmologist or whatever they're called. But whatever the thing is, it's really 13 billion years of existence, whatever, that's making me say Kiddush. Assuming that I know that I somehow make sense like this. Like if you say that Kiddush means 6 days, then you stuck. But if you say it means, creation in general, let's say, even creation is a complicated term, but let's say you say it means that, then you just have a better pshat. And now that's what I'm saying. That's how I see where revealing the further level is going to actually change. It does change the actual meaning of Sheresh Me'Beresh just by putting it in the bigger context. Now it's a question of interpretation. You have to know how you understand that.
If he finds a different source, different thing.
His action will have a different meaning. I don't know if anyone just stopped doing anything, but his action will really be different. It really means something else. And you can't say, well, I'm going to have a false kavanah. I'm going to just think what I think. Because you can't, I don't believe in the statement, it means to me. No such thing as meaning to you. There is meaning is objective.
Well, I think you're wrong.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to describe what I think. I don't think that works. Because no such thing means to me, whatever, there's basic contradictions here. Means to me in any case means for what it is. And I could be wrong. In other words, you could be wrong about what it means to you. That's another way of saying it. Or at least you could be wrong would be a nice way of saying you could be only partially right. And you can't, and I think that when people say, well, I'm going to make a kavanah and so on, I'm going to make my own pshat, what they really have to be doing is discovering some aspect of reality, of the real causality in it. And I don't think you could actually change entirely the meaning of something. For example, even in the material sense, right? Because if I literally ask you the question, why do you have 2 challahs on Shabbos? Okay, why? Do you have 2 challahs? Why do you have 2 challahs? So there's a traditional way of answering because it says lechem mishnah, something with a man, I don't know. That's how the answer goes, right? Now this is not the complete answer. It never was. Because that's not a reason. In other words, that's not the full reason why you're doing it. Because, for example, it proves it simply, if that story would be true and would never be a minig of having 2 challahs, you wouldn't do it. So that's not the full reason. That's part of the reason, maybe. You could now you have to figure out how to connect these 2 things. You need a theory, a multi-cause theory, and I think that most problems that people have are always missing that. Or if you only have 2 kinds of causes, one is subjective, one is objective, but there's many more kinds of causes than those 2. That's the general statement.
Subjective causes. Now you're agreeing to them?
No, I say there's more causes. I never deny anything. I just say that there's not enough. I said that there's not forcing causes, but there's a lot of different things when they all connect that they're all true causes. They're really causes. A cause doesn't have to be a cause that forces. It could be a cause that allows, right? Yeah. For example, there's different kind of cause. Exactly. You need to make a list of all the kinds of causes. There's probably more than people generally in common language. We confuse all of them. So, for example, if you say, why do you have 2 challahs? So some level of it is going to be actually historically. In other words, because there's some kind of unbroken chain, or broken and then reconnected through text or through something, whatever it is, there's some kind of actual causal chain, in the physical sense, that brought these 2 challahs to my table. It didn't literally bring. There's a lot of people making decisions in the middle, but if you ask for the answer to a certain question, you have to distinguish which question, and I don't have right now a simple way of saying it. It's
you don't think people can speak up and hug them to spread like wildfire? We just had one yesterday.
That's true, and all of those have many, many, many causes.
It's nothing. No one.
All of them have real, true causes. For example, people say Shemana. What are you talking about? And there's many, many causes for this. The most primary one is that people like money, and that people like money goes back all the way to Chotet Marishan. So therefore, if someone tells you, and if someone comes and says, you know that what's the real reason we say Shiras Parshas Haman and Gil B'Shalach? Because Adam Marishan did a chet, and we have to be mechavan to attack that. He would be saying the truth. He'd only be jumping a lot of levels causality and skipping the guy that made up the story. But that guy is a very small link. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And of course, it always depends on what different people and different kinds of explanations that people like. Really comes down to like which level of cause or which stage of the cause you care about, or which one you think is more important, or something like that. Of course, it's true. It's also true in some sense that some chakran, this specific thing was invented by some chakran. Assuming, I don't know, whatever the history you think exactly happened, it's also true. And it's also true that's a good thing to if you're a from person, it's a good thing to have betochen and to daven or whatever, but however you explain it.
So what's the point of trying to figure it out? I understand what
in some sense, depends what you want to figure out. If you want to figure out why am I doing it in this day specifically, and in this way specifically, then the true answer is going to be because a liar made it up, and that is some kind of a problem. I think that it's some kind of a problem. If it's a big problem, you could say, well, I don't care. Don't care enough about that part of the story. But it's a true part of the story. You can't deny it. You can't deny it. You can't cut it out by saying, well, I don't care. You could say I don't care, but you can't cut it out by saying, well, it's not why. It is why. It's not entirely why. It never was entirely why, by the way. It's not that you're Oibachacham that knows that it never, the Mendel, who cares? I never the Mendel did it. That's so funny. And who cares? And if I know the story, and that whole still is a theory that one I know that some guy made up, and maybe there's different, doesn't make it's still like funny, like, and if the guy that really said it, I mean, like who God told him himself, like what difference does it make? The point, it's not the point. Of course, but what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. What I would say is something like this. I don't like, if using this silly example, I don't like when people say, I'm trying to clarify, but I'm going too fast. I don't like when people say, oh, so really it's a mistake because it said Gimel and it was I don't remember, remind me of the theory, whatever, something. It's Bechlal doesn't say that. And shine. So therefore, one, like the new atheist way of saying, oh, you dumb people, you're doing a mistake. Okay? And then the what you call the postmodern answer, or the subjectivist answer is to say, oh, you dumb atheist, you think that I'm really doing it because that says in that book or whatever, or that tzaddik said it, and you're all confused because books don't make anyone do anything. Only like it as a certain reduction, or you could say, because I think that somehow, you could say a lot of complicated things, because it somehow fits into my belief system that davening helps or whatever. And really it's because of that and something like that. And Yitzchok Lowy thinks that both of these theories are incomplete, because it's true, because the atheist has more of a point than you want to admit. In other words, not the point, not in the way that he thinks, right? Because he also thinks he does have this mistake where he's like reducing all like human action to this like weird kind of naturalistic causality, which doesn't work ever. But his causality is also true, and it might be the one that makes a difference. I don't know. I think in some instances it makes a difference. In some instances it does. There are some instances where sort of showing that something is a mistake will stop most people from doing it, right? And the reason is because there it seems to be important. I don't know what the example would be, but let's say there's such things.
Biblical criticism, the reason will be something like
biblical criticism works only on people that have historical religion. That's another thing. But why people?
I'm driving nuts, but why?
I'm not getting into this now. Well, I'm going to get stuck. In other words, this is true. If the believer had an atheist I don't know how to call this kind of metaphysics. If he thought that the correct way of explaining people's actions is by giving like natural science kind of historical explanations, that's a sentence that needs to be explained, then he would stop doing it if he agrees with the historical criticism. Unless he has this fancy shtickle Torah, which means he's changing his metaphysics of human action. But I think that this person is. Yeah, he could try to actions that say it did happen historically. Yeah. But assuming that he agrees, that he like gets confused, so it would actually change. And for that person, it's true that he was caused by his belief, and his belief turned out to not represent reality. So therefore, it stopped causing it, or the opposite belief, or then now he's doing it just for social reasons, and then he got a split, and then he gets confused, and he goes to therapy, whatever. But that's like a true story. But I think that in the more general explanation, those people are both wrong, because there is obviously some part of the cause that is, or some kind of cause that is because of the lie, but there's always another part that is different, You could say more general or more broad or more deep or whatever you want to call it. And that's actually what the people that are giving like Kabbalistic pshatim, which also try to be objective, right? No real Kabbalist is a subjectivist, almost none. They all think that what they're describing is part of reality. They don't disagree that the rest of reality exists. They think this is the more important or more basic or more primary part of reality. And he's saying, of course, and maybe maybe in some instances the missing link would be a problem. But in general, he doesn't care about those kind of things because he would tell you, because he has all kind of complicated chat, like what he would tell you something like, yes, the reason it came to me, I can make up all kind of complicated things. But he could say, it came to me through a lie, that's true. But I in general, I'm the kind of person that only cares about like the most basic kind of truths. And therefore, I don't even see the liar that made up Gimel B'Shalach. I only see a diminution ruining the world and making people have to work, and therefore since then we're trying to solve that in all kinds of complicated ways. And I even could tell you, I can even add to that, like Tuesday has some, I don't know what the Kabbalistic meaning of Tuesday is, somehow what it means connected to somehow, and of course that person didn't know it, so that's not like his reason, but it's still true.
But it's still true because it's how that's the world.
Because it's more basically true than I could even say like that's what caused that person, but that would be very elaborate. But it's more basically true than that. Anyways, that's why I don't like when in the same. That's why I think that you do have to reinterpret the original, like the more pshat reasons, the historical reasons. That's why what I did today was trying, not very explicit, but like trying to tell you that this is really whoever invented Tu B'Shvat. He thought really this. Okay, I don't really care what he thought, but I think the kind of things that were moving him are the same kind of things that are moving me. It doesn't have to be. I could say, well, I'm a step removed. Now I'm just doing it because it's minik. But there's a big difference. If you're like here, that minik of Sam B'Dam is also being caused. It's still being caused by the others in an indirect way through my choice to be mamshech der minhagim. But it's still a real. Again, you need a definition for like a kind of cause that doesn't, and not the same kind of cause as gravity, but it's a kind of cause. It's a kind of explanation that makes it intelligible. So this is where now I'm like on the historical people's sides, because they're definitely describing part of how it actually worked. I think it's important. I don't think you could hide behind this like, I only care with the meaning for me. That's why I have to be a much more crazy kind of person and say that the meaning for you was different, not the meaning for me. And this is a problematic thing, because of course you could just make up whatever you want. It has to be true also. Say that. That's the story. That's the challenge. Okay. Anyways, you want to go home?
Sorry, I have to go home.